What's up guys, this is Jay from Wargaming, and today I'm going to be showing you how to take the cool rocky terrain pieces that we built last week and turn them into some finished terrain for our Malifaux table. Check it out. So these are the materials we're going to use to finish these awesome terrain pieces that we were working on. So I've got here some straw that I purchased at the dollar store. This is usually used for gift baskets, but you're going to see later in this video we're going to be using this to make some cool grass and stuff. Of course, we need acrylic paints, the brown that you saw in our last video last week that I painted the entire terrain pieces with. We're still going to need to touch up a bit and stuff like that, so you still need your brown burnt umber. I've got here a cinnamon brown, just for some dry brushing, as well as Westport gray, which we're going to use for the rocks themselves. And some Liquitex Basics unbleached titanium, the equivalent of like bleach bone or U-Shopty bone, I think it's called now. Also, we're going to need PVA glue, as always, and I've just got here some clump foliage, which I've been using on my Malifaux bases, which we're going to use on these pieces to tie them in with our Malifaux table, as well as my Malifaux bases. So, let's get into it. Cool, so now that our pieces are all brown, we can actually start painting these things. I've decided to add these to our Malifaux table to sort of freshen it up a bit. So to sort of keep with the theme of what we were doing with the Malifaux table, I'm going to start by doing some dry brushing of just this acrylic gray that I have. The name of it's Westport gray. I got this at the Dollarama. It's the equivalent of like GW's Dawnstone, but you don't want to be using good paints on terrain. I mean, really, this is arts and crafts time, like I said, so why not use craft paint? So, for those of you who have not seen any of my past videos or are not familiar with dry brushing, I've gone over it plenty of times before, but I will go over it again for you new people watching. Very simple concept. This is the basics of painting right here. You just take a little bit of my Westport gray and get a little bit on my tank brush and brush it out on my paper towel until there's very little paint in the brush. You can see here, that's what I want. And just broad strokes back and forth. Start light and slowly get heavier. It's much easier to add more paint later than obviously it is to take paint off. So I'm just going to do broad strokes back and forth all over the areas that have sort of those, what were when we were still at the spackle stage, just those sort of white styrofoam balls. I'm going to hit all those areas with this gray. Don't worry if you get some on the sand like that. We're going to touch up the brown later and we're going to make the sand look like sand, but we're going to have to paint all the gray areas before we can paint the ground. Like I said in the Malifaux table video, it makes sense for there to be dirt on the rock, but it doesn't make sense for there to be rock dust on the dirt for some weird reason. So, gray first. You can see this weird little pillar thing I had going on there. Get it on good. Don't worry if you get a little too thick in some spots. That's absolutely okay, because we're going to be putting more dry brush layers on top of this. But for now, I'm just kind of broadly making any of these areas gray. So there you go. That's kind of the idea. Same thing on the top. Flat area, I'm going to be very light with it at first, because especially on flat areas where there's more texture and more detail you'll find, the heavier you go, it's still okay. It really just gets to the high areas, but with flat areas you got to be real careful because you'll end up with a paint streak, and that does not look good in this case. We don't want these things to look like they're painted, even though they are painted. See, right there? You guys can see that, but I got a streak, so I went on too heavy. I didn't brush it out enough on my paper towel. And those are the kind of things you just have to look out for. Again, it's not the end of the world that I did that. I'm going to put a couple more layers on top of this, of other dry brushes, but that's basically it for now. There you go. So, on to the next layer. Now I'm going to whip out this brown again that I used originally on the piece, and I'm just going to go around, and all the areas that I think I want to keep as dirt rather than as rock, I'm just going to touch up anywhere I got some of the dry brush on that. And it's literally that simple. Literally So like before, just stabbing the piece, not stroking, like not doing large strokes. Instead, you want to stab the piece to get in between all the little grains of sand. There you go. Make sure also, as you're doing this, guys, if there's any areas of the sand, like if you can see on the very end here, there's some light areas where the color of the sand is showing through. This is the stage where you get to touch that up. So you're touching that up, and you're also trying to touch up any of the areas you got the dry brush onto that you still want to keep as sand. And that's all it is. So now that we've touched up all the dark brown on our sand areas, we're just going to give them a little slightly lighter dry brush, just sort of like a medium shade. So I've got here the cinnamon brown. It's just slightly lighter than the burnt umber. It's got a little bit more of a red brown to it. And very simply, just like we did with the stone, we're going to do a little dry brush. Take a little bit in my brush here. Now I've got a slightly smaller brush than I used on the stones. For the stones I used this tank brush. This one I'm going to have to get a little more precise. I'm just going to brush it out like I did before on my paper towel here. And just do broad strokes. Trying not to get too much onto the gray. Just get it onto the sand areas that I want as sand. Just there. You can see there, it's just giving it a nice lighter shade. Just to bring it up a little bit so it's not so dark. And to kind of tie it in with the rest of our Malifaux terrain. I'm just being kind of haphazard with it. Like I say, don't go too crazy. There you go. That's how simple it is. Cool, so now that our cinnamon brown is dry brushed onto all of our pieces, we're going to give them one final dry brush layer just to tie the gray and the brown all into each other, kind of unify the entire piece. So I've got here my Liquitex Basics Unbleached Titanium. I like to use this as my final coat on a lot of things simply because it's a very strong paint and it's inexpensive. A little more expensive than the dollar store craft paints I was using, but it's more of an artist quality acrylic, but not such high quality as like Citadel paints or Vallejo or something like that, which obviously you would use on your miniatures. You don't want to use that on terrain, you'll end up wasting a lot. Use this kind of stuff. This is like $5 Canadian for this giant bottle. As you can see, I'm almost done it, but that's because I use it for like everything. So it's pretty much the equivalent of like your Citadel Ushopti bone, or bleached, what used to be bleached bone. And just like before, I'm just going to take my tank brush, brush it out on my paper towel. Now, I'm not going to be so careful with this one as far as where I put it, because I want to do the entire piece. What I do need to be careful about is that I don't put it on too heavy. As I've said before with dry brushing, it's easier to start light and put more paint on later. To take paint off is obviously impossible. And at this stage, we're at our final step, so we don't want to mess it up and have to redo all these colors all over again. So make sure there's very, very little paint in your brush and start very light. See, already too heavy. That's okay, I can touch that up or cover it up with foliage or whatever. We're going to be adding a lot more stuff to this terrain piece, but as far as painting, this is hopefully going to be the last stage. So I just want to go very gently. That's much better. You see the difference between that and that? Yeah, that was too much. Right off the bat, I didn't brush enough off of my paper towel. So make sure you really get a really light dry brush on this. Because we don't want this color to be prominent. We just want it to add sort of a little bit of light to the tops of everything. Lighten everything up, make it look like the sun is shining down. And same thing in this cave here, we don't have to get right in there, because there will be some shadow and stuff like that. And we're just going to hit, dirt, and we're also going to hit the gray. And what that'll do is that'll make the stone parts, the gray parts, go pow, create like a white layer on top, as well as the sand. But because it's the same color, it'll sort of blend the sand together with the stone and unify the entire terrain piece. So I'm just going to go around and do all of that. As you can see there, that's actually looking really good so far. I'm going to go around and do all of that, and we'll come back when it's all done. Cool, so now to finish these pieces off, now that we've done all our painting and dry brushing, we're going to just add some plant life and give these pieces some life. So I have here this basket straw, I guess used for gift baskets and things like that. Got this at the dollar store. Again, Dollarama is the best place you can go to get terrain stuff, to tell you the truth, because it costs nothing and they have so many useful things. Now, this is not the container it came in. It actually came in one of those bags with the cardboard thing on the top. I put it in here. This is actually an old jar of cashews. We eat a lot of cashews in my house, so it's good because I got a bunch of these jars to put stuff in. Reduce, reuse, recycle, right? So, right now we're going to be making some like grass, tall grass tufts, I guess is the best way to put it. So all I'm going to do is take a pinch of this in my hand, pull out any of the long ones that are kind of loose, and then I'm just going to kind of fold these long strands over, pinch them like that, and then just kind of pull them straight like this. It's okay if they're super long and just fraying all over the place. It's not a big deal. Right now we just want to create a basic shape. I'm just going to do that. And as you can see, I got a nice little grass tuft there. Now I'm going to take the bottom that's all frayed like that and just give it a little twist to sort of bring everything together like that. And then just to hold it together, I'm going to take some liquid crazy glue or super glue and just put a dab on there. What that'll do is it'll flow between all the little strands and it'll create a nice little hard base for us. Boom. There we go. As you can see, I've got a bunch done here. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of them because I do have five pieces that I'm working on here. Even though I've only been showing you guys the one, I'm just going to make a whole bunch of these, you know, maybe 10 or 12 of them. And it's going to get everywhere, as you can see. Make a gigantic mess. Again, make sure you have a vacuum nearby or a broom of some sort because you don't want to be making a mess of your mother's kitchen table. So, same thing. Pull it straight like hairs or whatever. Give the end a little twist. And then dump my crazy glue on there. Like that. No problem. Cool. Just make a whole bunch more of those. So now that I've got my straw done in little bunches like this, I obviously don't want them this tall. First of all, these things are all floppy. They're all over the place. Plus, we're using this for 32mm miniatures. I mean, really, a 32mm miniature is only going to be that tall. We don't want the grass to be like, you know, 20 feet in the air. That's completely unrealistic. So, what we're going to do now is, now that we've got all these frays kind of all over the place, we're going to trim them with some scissors, just so they look like little tufts, like this. Just some tall grass, you know, about waist high on a standard Malifaux miniature. So, I'm going to take my bunch like this, pull it tight in my hands, find, you know, want it maybe half an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and just snip. Now you want really sharp scissors for this because this stuff is really weak. Boom, there we go. And then even here, where I've twisted the end and glued it together, I've got sort of too much of a twist. If I just glue that on, it's gonna look like a bunch of hay that was actually put together instead of a living plant. So I've got maybe 3/8 of an inch worth of glue there. I'm just gonna cut off half of it maybe. There we go. Create a nice base for it, and what you can do is even come down from the top of it with your finger and just kind of fray these out a bit so they don't look so purposely bunched together. And there you go. That's a nice little tuft of tall grass. So I'm going to cut all of these. I've done about 12 of these for my 5 terrain pieces. I'm going to go around and just cut them all up, and then we can start gluing them on. So the next step, we're just going to take some white glue. We're going to add quite a few layers of foliage to this, a couple different types, just to make it a little busy, make it not just, you know, straight stones. These ones are going to be fun because at this point we've got on our piece some areas here, like you can see down in here where the dry brush didn't quite get. That's where we're going to want to cover up. So any areas where we either put on dry brush too thick or we didn't get the dry brush, we're going to put this grass, we're going to put some other foliage. So this is really not only going to bring the terrain piece to life, but this is where we get to cover up our mistakes. So I'm going going to take one of these tufts of grass and I'm just going to stick it into that glue. I put a nice big glob of glue on there. You don't want to do too much because sometimes the white glue won't completely dry clear. It'll still leave a little bit of white. But with this stuff, we want to put a nice big glob because we want it to stay on there. Sorry, I had that off camera for you guys. I'm going to try and... So after I put it on even, I'm going to try and put a little bit more glue just sort of on top. Just to kind of hold it in. And there you go. Got some grass. Some dead plant life. Now I've got 5 terrain pieces. I've got 12 of these grass tufts. I am going to put maybe 2, maybe 3 on each one. So here, I would say I want one in this crevasse. Lots of PVA. And these guys are going to take a while to dry. So I want to make sure I get them on there good. Again, lots of PVA. So as you can see, that one just fell over as I put it down because I didn't have enough glue on there. And they will move around a bit because PVA does take a while to dry. So after you put them on, be very careful about placing them somewhere when you put them down to let them dry, because if it just falls over and then you don't notice and come back, you'll have messed it up. And it might be stuck down on its side or whatever, and that's going to be a pain in the butt because once you start peeling it off, you're going to start peeling off paint and sand and all kinds of things. So be very careful about where you put them, and be very careful that they stay upright once they're on. Because once I put this one on, I'm going to put this piece back with the others. Sweet, so final step, guys, we're just going to be adding some clump foliage to this mix. So I've got here some yellow clump foliage from Woodland Scenics. Again, this comes in a bag, so I've just dumped it into a Tupperware here, and I've been using it for all my Malifaux bases. So we're gonna, since I did the cobblestones on the table to match the cobblestones on my Malifaux bases, since I use this on my bases, we're gonna be using this on this terrain so that the table stays consistent for our battle reports. So, the terrain piece we've been working on, as you can see here, are tall grass now. I've left it for 40 minutes, maybe an hour. And it's not fully dry yet, but it's just tacky enough that they're not going to like fall off and fall over on me while I work on this next layer. We're going to have to wait for this glue to dry too, so I might as well do all my drawing time at the same time. But you do want to let these set before you start moving this piece around and shaking it around because they're very light, they will fall over otherwise. So make sure that glue is at least tacky, leave it for a half hour or an hour. So yeah, just like before, we're going to take the white glue and we're going to put it pretty much anywhere we want our grass foliage. The great thing about this stage in the game is, as you can see here, I've got a lot of dark brown still in a lot of the crevices because of course I dry brushed these pieces, and dry brushing tends to just hit the raised areas. At this point, I also pointed out to you when I was dry brushing this area right here, where there's like a super heavy dry brush, I can cover up these kinds of things. So this stage not only adds another level of foliage to the pieces, but now it allows me to actually cover my mistakes, which is great for a guy like myself who's trying to get this stuff done quick and still make it look good. And I can even put a little bit up near the base of the tall grass to sort of cover any inconsistencies in the connection of that to the table. So I've got a couple patches on there, I'm just going to show you guys. So this stuff, if you want to do bushes, you're going to want to clump it into a clump and stick that clump on. In this case, I'm not really looking for bushes, I'm looking for more of like a dead grass, dead moss kind of thing. And the good news is, because I'm going to be putting it in the dark areas as well as areas where I've dry brushed too light, in an arid sort of desert landscape, foliage actually tends to collect in areas that have sort of partial shade. I'm sure if any of you are watching down there in like Arizona or anything, you could probably confirm this. The desert sun just kind of kills everything. So even though it's super hot and plants do need light, they tend to grow more in areas that at least have partial shade. So that's good for us because that means, like I said, any areas like here where it's still too dark in the sort of shadowy areas, even though it would be dark in the shadowy areas, it looks like it's actually lacking detail rather than being natural shading. So that's where I'm going to put my glue. And the good news about the clump foliage, as opposed to static grass or anything like that, is that when I put it on, again, we're not making bushes, so I don't want to clump it. I want to spread it evenly around the glue, and I'm actually going to push it into the glue with my finger. And that way it'll actually fill all the weird little crevices I have in these pieces, from gloppiness of the spackle, gloppiness of the white glue, as well as I, put that brown coat of paint on there pretty solid. If you can see here, this weird little cave thing looks kind of shiny and weird, right? So I'm going to take just a dab of glue and put it just kind of sticking out, a little bit in, a little bit running out of that hole. And I can use my clump foliage again. When I push it in with my finger, it'll actually kind of fill that messed up looking area. And just like static grass or flock, I'm just going to tap it off after, so all the loose stuff falls, and then I can even give it a little blow. Do that off camera. It's all over my floor now, but that's fine. Vacuums up pretty easily. I want to save what I can, obviously, over the thing, but what I can't save, it's okay, I'll just vacuum it up later. And there you go. So I covered pretty much all our mistakes, as well as added another level of foliage to this table, matching it to my bases, matching it to our other terrain pieces, and matching it to our Malifaux table. So let's take a look at these when they're all fully done.
Isn't it beautiful? Everything works out.
Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed these terrain videos. Sorry I had to divide them into two, but I figured it was enough work that we could divide them into two separate videos for you guys. So thanks for watching them both, and I hope you guys built some awesome terrain pieces for your table as a result of these tutorials. Please, if you like our terrain videos, hit subscribe below. Also, check out the description below for our other social media links, as well as our Patreon account. We don't do this to make money, but it costs money to make these terrain pieces, so if you want to keep seeing some cool terrain from us, please check out our Patreon account for simply $1 a video. For the videos that you already enjoy for free, please help us give back, help us out, and it goes a long way, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and until our next encounter.
Like a monkey in a rocket on its way back.